I'll move you up there in a sec.
Yep. And Councillor Devine's indicated. Good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, and others. I am Councillor Emmett McKenna, and I am the chair of the Planning Applications Committee. I would like to welcome you to the Planning Applications Committee, which again is being held as an online meeting, as permitted by the Coronavirus Act 2020, while social distancing rules remain in place. The public and the press can still see and hear the meeting by following the link from our website, and this will be available for repeat viewing at your convenience. Agenda papers have been circulated on the Council's website in accordance with our usual practice. To ensure that proper discussion takes place on the matters before us, and that where a decision is required is clear what has been decided and by whom, where appropriate, members will be asked to vote individually, stating if they are for, against, or wish to abstain. To help those observing the proceedings to follow the meeting and understand how decisions have been reached, we will be presenting some of the information on slides as we proceed. Members and officers attending will be asked to introduce themselves. This is for the benefit of the public and also to ensure that all are in attendance as expected and that they can hear and speak to the meeting. To help me manage the meeting, members have been asked to make me aware if they wish to speak on an item in advance. This does not prevent additional contributions being made, but I ask all councillors to notify me when you wish to speak in the chat section of their screens and then wait to be called. This will avoid councillors talking over each other. When not speaking, will councillors put their microphones on mute? When called to speak, please unmute your microphone and pause for about 3 seconds. This is to allow for the slight time delay in connection, as we don't want to miss your opening remarks. I'm aware that we are at the mercy of individuals' broadband services, and it is possible that loss of connection may happen. However, as long as we have 5 members still in the meeting, we will be quorate. I will now do a roll call of councillors. As I say your name, could you introduce yourselves to the meeting? I am Councillor Emmett McKenna, Chair of the Planning Applications Committee, and I represent Whitley Ward. I will call on the other members of the committee alphabetically. Councillors, please state your name and the ward you represent. Please speak slowly and clearly for the benefit of the record. Councillor Devine.
Councillor Ricky Devine, Lib Dem member for Tilehurst Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Ennis.
Yeah, Councillor John Ennis, Southcote Ward.
Councillor Lovelock.
Councillor Joe Lovelock, Norcote Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Page.
Councillor Tony Page, lead member for Planning, Transport and the Environment and an Abbey councillor.
Councillor Robinson.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Councillor Simon Robinson from Peppard Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland.
Councillor Karen Rowland, Abbey Ward, lead member for Culture, Heritage and Recreation. Thank you.
Councillor Sokele.
Hello everyone, Councillor Shokele here. I'm Vice Chair Planning Applications Committee and Councillor for Caversham.
Councillor Stanford Beale.
Councillor Jane Stanford Beale, Conservative member for Peppard Ward.
Councillor Williams.
Good evening everyone, Josh Williams, Park Ward.
Thank you, councillors. I would also like to introduce you to the officers who are in attendance tonight. They may not be on screen as much as the councillors, but it is right that I introduce them to you so that you will know who they are and what their role is. Julie Williams is our Planning Development Manager. She is our Senior Planning Advisor and she is responsible for the work of the planning team. She will also advise me tonight on any matters relating to planning policy, guidance and practice. Richard Etoff is the Development Management Team Leader within the Planning Department. We also have case officers Connie Davis and Ethne Humphreys presenting reports on applications this evening. Wendy Baddison is a planning solicitor in the Council's legal department. She is here to advise me on planning and local government law. This is to ensure that when the committee makes a decision, it is both within its powers and legally sound. Simon Hill and Nikki Simpson are committee service officers. They are able to advise on council procedures and will also be taking minutes of this meeting. With the introduction out of the way, let us turn to procedural matters. For voting on information items of this meeting in part 1 of the agenda, I will ask, are we content to proceed? I will pause for about 5 seconds after asking the question and will take silence to mean that all members are agreed. The first of these information items are the minutes of the last meeting. These may be found at pages 7 to 14 of the agenda pack. Members, can you confirm that the minutes are a correct record of the meeting held on the 3rd of June 2020? Thank you. That is agreed. Turning now to declarations of interest under the Council's Code of Conduct. Do any members have any declarations of interest which they wish to bring to the attention of the committee? Thank you. Turning next to questions, there are no questions tabled at this meeting, so we can proceed directly to agenda item 4. Applications determined by officers using extended delegated powers. Policy Committee on the 27th of April agreed that the Deputy Director of Planning, Transport and Regulatory Services be given extended delegated authority to determine planning applications and tree preservation orders, and to have fewer called-in applications to help reduce the number of reports coming to each meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. This item provides a schedule of applications affected by this change and the decisions made. Can I ask the planning manager to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. There are 2 decisions recorded for you. One is for a major application that officers have refused planning permission for, and the other one is an application that was agreed could be decided by officers having been called in previously. You're asked to note the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Rowland, you've indicated you wish to speak to this item. Please do.
Yes, just very quickly. Thank you, Chair. The process is actually hopefully streamlining the situation that we have right now with our online committees, but I would like to commend in particular the refusal of the application for 14 Zinzan Street of the Rear Dormer. Just in so noting, it is applauded on my behalf because they have actually really paid attention to the rear of the sites within the Russell Street, Castle Hill, Oxford Road Conservation Area, and it was a very appropriate call in my book, and I would like to thank the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Thank you. Then we shall move on to agenda item 5, planning appeals. This can be found for members' information at pages 19 to 26 of the agenda pack. Please can I ask Julie Williams to introduce the item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report shows that we have had 1 appeal lodged since your last meeting, and that's against the refusal of the application for 39 Brunswick Hill. And there have been 2 appeal decisions received dismissing changes of use at 68 St John's Road, ONC House, Caversham, which was against refusals of prior approval applications. The accompanying report gives more background on this unusual case, where the applicant sought to get around the minimum size criteria for changes of use from light industrial to residential to be considered PD, using the prior approval route by putting in two applications and splitting the 1,000 square metre unit into two application sites. The inspector ruled that as the building has a gross floor area of more than 500 square metres, the development could not accord with the relevant criteria to be permitted development. So a full planning application would be required. So with that, so we're very pleased with that result because it clarifies what could have been a sort of loophole in that procedure. You're asked to note the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, would anyone wish to speak to this item? And as I have no indication, I will, and I'd like to thank officers for yet another stunning victories with the clean sweeps, and also for the planning inspectorate, who I don't often thank, but for confirming the fact that in this case, that the spirit of the law is also important to the letter of the law, and it will be very useful for further decisions going forward if any further applicants come forward to try and break the spirit and letter in this case. Then we'll move to the next item, which is agenda item 6, applications for prior approval. Developments that qualify for prior approval are submitted to the planning department and are passed automatically provided they meet the criteria in the regulations. The committee has no power to debate the applications or change the decisions. I call on the planning manager.
Thank you, Chair. This report is a summary version of your previous reports on these types of applications. It provides an update on the effect on fee income and the affordable housing implications, and provides a simple number table for you at the back, giving out the different types of applications we've received in this process and the decisions we've made. You're asked to note the report.
Thank you. Councillors, would anyone wish to address the committee? Then I will take your silence for our approval to move to the next item. This is where I will then introduce planning applications discussion, starting with agenda item 7. As mentioned in my introduction to this meeting, to help with managing this event, councillors have been asked to make me aware if they wish to speak on an item in advance. After the planning officer has presented the report, I will then call on those councillors that have already asked to speak. If any councillors have a question or want to comment, please indicate in the chat function of this meeting so I may then call you to speak. The first application is at agenda item 7 of the agenda, application reference 200147. Please can councillors turn to pages 31 to 40 of the agenda pack, and I will now call on Connie Davis, the case officer, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. Number 30 Addison Road is a modest-sized terrace property. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a single-storey rear extension. The application is part retrospective as the development is largely in place, although this scheme proposes modifications to the extension's existing roof form. The development extends the original outrigger and infills the tunnel between the application site and neighbouring property number 28. The application is being presented to committee members after being called in by Councillor Page for determination. An enforcement investigation began in June 2018 when concerns were raised about the size of the extension being built. A retrospective application for this unauthorised development was refused planning permission due to its size and impact on neighbours. Photograph 1 shows how the development originally appeared when first investigated by the enforcement team. Throughout the course of subsequent applications to try and regularise the development, the plastic rear canopy was removed and photograph 2 is how the site looks today. Following the refusal of the previous applications, an enforcement notice was served to require the extension to be removed or reduced. The notice was appealed and subsequently quashed by the planning inspector in May 2020. This was due to the notice itself lacking precision in its means of compliance. This application is being assessed on its own merits, and as noted in the main report, the result of the enforcement appeal is being reviewed by the enforcement team and legal department. The planning inspector's reports for the appeals are included as part of the update pack. This proposal seeks to retain the 7.2 metre deep extension which infills the tunnel between the site and neighbouring property. It also measures a depth of 2.4 metres beyond the existing outrigger along the boundary with number 32 Addison Road to create a levelled rear elevation. At present, the extension has an extremely low-pitched roof which almost appears flat. This application seeks to modify the existing roof form so that it will become monopitched. To the side of the extension, the roof will be reduced to an eaves height of 2 metres. This has been proposed with the intention of reducing impact on neighbouring properties. However, by way of its excessive depth and design, particularly its contrived roof arrangement, officers consider that the proposal has not overcome the issues raised when refusing the previous applications. The proposed elevations for each application can be seen at the end of the main report, and it is not considered that a significant material change has occurred to address the issues raised. As such, the proposal is not considered to be in accordance with policies H9 and CC7 of the Reading Borough Local Plan, as the extension is not in proportion with the modest terrace property and surpasses the Design Guide to House Extensions guidance that rear extensions should not normally extend to a depth of more than 4 metres, with proposals relating to terraced houses being more strictly assessed on a case-by-case basis due to the constraints of these sites. In addition, the extension is considered to be of excessive bulk along the shared boundary with number 28, despite the proposed lower roof height. Concerns are also raised that the development will still reduce outlook from the rear windows of this neighbouring property, as can be seen on the photo on the slide. As such, the proposal is not considered acceptable in terms of neighbouring amenity, contrary to policy CC8 of the Reading Borough Local Plan. The application is therefore recommended for refusal based on the reasons outlined in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have received indication from Councillor Tony Page and Councillor Karen Rowland that they wish to speak to this item. And also I believe Councillor Devine. I will call them in that order, starting with Councillor Tony Page.
Chair, thank you. I think also Councillor Devine indicated he wanted to speak on this. But can I thank the officers for their thorough introduction. I asked for this to come to committee because of the sensitivity of this application, actually before the enforcement notice decision was received. I'll come on to that in a few seconds. I think the officer report sets out a persuasive reason why the committee should refuse the application. There are slight changes as have been described, but the fact is, as is set out in paragraph 6.3, the depth and width of the extension remains unaltered and extends to approximately 7.2 metres. We've just seen one of the shots of the impact on the neighbouring neighbouring property at number 28 Addison Road, and the following paragraph, paragraph 6.4, sets out reasons why it is out of keeping and considered to reduce the quality of the area. And indeed, the inspector's decision of last year reinforces the views that our planning officers had about the original application, which has of course not been greatly changed in this latest one before us. So I agree with the assessment and also the conclusion. I was, however, concerned. I called this application to committee before the result of the enforcement notice, but knowing that an enforcement decision was in the offing. It was therefore disappointing to learn that the enforcement notice was quashed for technical reasons that frankly shouldn't have arisen, Chair. And we don't normally, and I can't recollect the last time an enforcement notice in Reading, served by Reading Borough Council, was quashed. We may have had one, but certainly not in recent years, and to lose it on a technicality is unfortunate. That mistake should not have been made, because as the inspector rightly says in his very short appeal decision, which has been circulated tonight, it is well established by case law that an enforcement notice must clearly set out what the recipient is required to do. And clearly, when you read carefully what is set out in C and D, that is hardly the case. So I would welcome a comment from officers as to the assessment, the process that's taking place, because I'm slightly surprised it's taking so long, considering the decision date was the 11th of May. And I think it certainly raises wider issues that perhaps, if not this evening, Chair, we should receive a report about. But in terms of the specific recommendations before us tonight, Chair, I have no problem proposing that we refuse for the 2 reasons set out on page 31, and I would so move.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland, please speak, to be followed by Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to reiterate all of Councillor Page's points. He, of course, as usual, made them quite well. The additional thing that I would like to raise is the onus that is on a property owner to do the necessary work, to understand what, when one owns a property, what is proper and appropriate in terms of an extension. And that is an onus that falls individually to each property owner to do that work. Unfortunately, the property owner did not do that, and as a result, he's going to be faced with an unfortunate situation of having to probably reverse his decision there to build out. I think that you really need to understand the property, the place, and certainly these are characterful houses that deserve to be respected. And this was not respectful. He could clearly see, I'm sure, from the rest of his neighbors not doing this, that he was out of line. And I would be very happy to go with the officer's recommendation to refuse this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Devine, please address the committee.
Thank you, Chair. I think I agree with the outcome of this report to refuse. My problem is the reasons given, the mass of the extension and the effect it has on number 28, which is serious. But I also like to know what happens legally now that we've had a notice quashed. If we reject the planning application this evening, where does that leave the applicant, and what happens to the extension, the part of the extension that already exists? So I'm a bit lost as to what happens legally from now on in. So I'd like some clarification if that's possible.
I will now call upon our officers to address the questions from committee. Who wants to go first, Julie or Connie?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll dive in here. We've been sort of emailing behind the scenes to see where we've got to with this. We have been obviously seeking legal advice on the outcome of the quashed appeal decision. Officers, I suppose, have been trying to be helpful in issuing our enforcement notice to provide guidance as to what could be done without demolishing the whole of the extension, but it's quite clear from the inspector's comments and case law nationally more recently that we shouldn't be doing that. We should be enforcing that the whole of the unauthorised work should come down, and then the applicant or the house owner has the opportunity then to come back in with a new application for an alternative scheme. So we are able now to reissue a fresh enforcement notice. Obviously, it seemed right to await the outcome of this decision tonight. So we have the sort of the mandate from councillors to press our case, and we can now serve a further enforcement notice requiring that all of this structure is removed, and the applicant then has the right to then appeal that notice or indeed put in another application that would make a more meaningful change that would allow us to recommend approval for it. I hope that helps in answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Devine, is that satisfactory for yourself?
Yes, that's fine. I can understand where we're going from here on in. Thank you. And thank you to the officers.
Thank you. I will then also ask if any other officers wish to come in to any of the other points addressed by councillors. Excellent. Silence is no. Do any further councillors wish to speak to this item? Perfect. Silence is no. It will then be put to the vote. We have a proposal from Councillor Page, which I'll be seconding, that we will support the recommendations as printed to refuse for the reasons as printed on page 31 of our agendas tonight. Thank you. So we're going to call the vote in alphabetical order as usual, starting with Councillor Devine. Could you please indicate if you wish to vote for the recommendation to refuse, to vote against the recommendation to refuse, or to abstain?
For the refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Ennis.
For the recommendation to refuse.
Thank you. Councillor Lovelock.
For the recommendation to refuse.
Councillor Page.
For the recommendation to refuse.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
For the recommendation to refuse. For.
Councillor Rowland.
For the recommendation to refuse.
Thank you. Councillor Socali.
For the recommendation to refuse.
Councillor Stanford Beale.
For the recommendation to refuse.
Councillor Williams.
For.
Thank you, councillors. I will then also vote to refuse this application as printed, and that is now unanimous. Thank you. This application is now refused as recommended. We move to the next item on our agenda, which is item 8, application 200061. Can councillors please turn to pages 41 to 62 of the agenda pack? I will now call on the case officer, Ethne Humphreys, to introduce the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. This application relates to the Abbey School on Kendrick Road, which is located in the Kendrick Road Conservation Area. Slide 1 shows the location plan and an aerial view for existing context. There is an update report for this application, which includes further comments from environmental protection colleagues on the relocation of the existing floodlighting, clarification on the use of glazing, clarification on the roof garden, and typographical corrections.
Planning permission is sought for extensions to the school to provide a new common room, study area, additional classroom space, roof garden, and reconfiguration of the existing car parking area. As part of the application, it is proposed to remove 1 of 4 netball courts, relocate existing floodlighting, and remove 4 Scots Pines trees. Slide 2 shows the proposed site plan and the proposed elevations when viewed from the east. Concerns were originally raised about the loss of the 4 Scots pine trees. Photo 1 of slide 3 shows the Scots pines when viewed from the north. The photos also indicate some of the existing parking area directly in front of these trees. Photo 2 of slide 3 shows the Scots pines when viewed from the west and the relationship with the existing access road. Photo 3 shows the Scots pines when viewed from the east, again indicating the relationship with the current parking arrangements on the site. To mitigate against the loss of these trees, the applicant has proposed 4 replacement mature Scots pines to be located further along the same boundary as those to be removed, and 6 additional trees to enhance the landscaping provision in the site, as well as further additional landscaping. Slide 4 shows a larger view of the proposed site plan and indicates the location of the 10 trees proposed, which is a net gain of 6 trees on the site. The Council's Natural Environment team and your planning officers considered that the proposed mitigation and the additional benefits they offer is acceptable in this very specific instance. Furthermore, it is considered that the 4 replacement trees proposed further along the southern boundary would have improved growing conditions compared to the existing trees, with no cars parked directly in front. As discussed in the main officer's report, the proposed scheme would provide better education facilities, wider sustainability benefits, biodiversity enhancements where there are currently few, and a net gain of mature trees across the site. Furthermore, the design of the scheme is considered acceptable with no adverse harm to any neighbouring properties. The proposals are considered to be acceptable within the context of national and local policies, as detailed in the main officer report, and the application is recommended for approval subject to the recommended conditions, including those in the update report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have Councillor Rowland, who has indicated to speak. Please, can you address the committee?
Right, thank you, Chair. This is overall obviously an intensification of a property within a conservation area, and if you look at the conservation area outline, it is right in the center of the conservation area. However, the views from Kendrick Road are not as strongly affected, and that is a very important view from the conservation area. So I will grant it that. It would obviously affect, excuse me, some of the views or some of the impact from the buildings behind Kendrick Road, or they're on Kendrick Road. Excuse me, I'm gonna have to cough. I was also a little bit concerned about the view from the fields, which is the view from the south. And there were a number of, I asked for a clarification about the way the building would look. Let me grab a drink here, I apologize. About the way the building would look from that southern view, of which we have an elevation. The top floor is actually going to be more of a glass structure, which was sent in for additional clarification today in our update pack, which was gratefully received. So that being the case, you're going to have a lighter kind of look and not quite as ponderous as it first seemed in some of the elevation drawings. So with that, my heart was greatly relieved, and I think that overall it will provide a much better benefit for the students. I was very pleased with the landscape and ecology report here, which really does go a long way to increasing biodiversity within a conservation area. Increasing biodiversity anywhere in the town is a good thing, and I know that they've worked with the officers to mitigate the trees, and I think overall we will be looking at a biodiversity gain, which is a wonderful thing. So with that, I would like to endorse the officer's recommendation that we pass this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Do any other councillors wish to speak to this item? Thank you. Then, as I see, sorry, I'd like to call in planning officers if they wish to speak. Silence is no. Legal, do you wish to speak? Silence is no. Thank you. Councillor Rowland has made a proposal that we approve the planning application as printed. I will second Councillor Rowland's proposal and we will move to the vote. As before, I will call councillors in alphabetical order. And can you please indicate if you wish to vote for the recommendation to grant full planning permission with the attached recommendations, attached conditions, against the application, or wish to abstain. Councillor Devine, could you please tell us if you wish to vote for, against, or abstain?
For the recommendation to grant.
Thank you. Councillor Ennis?
For the recommendation to grant.
Councillor Lovelock?
For the recommendation to grant.
Thank you. Councillor Page?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson?
For the recommendation to grant.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland?
For the recommendation to grant.
Councillor Sukale?
For the recommendation to grant.
Okay. Councillor Stanford Bill?
For the recommendation to grant.
Okay. Councillor Williams?
For.
Thank you. And I will also vote in the affirmative and vote for the application. That is now unanimous. Thank you, councillors. I will be calling this meeting to a close in record time for ourselves. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Well chaired again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good night.